House of Representatives orders immediate investigation of oil spill cleanups in Niger Delta. President's $22 billion loan request stalls in the House of Representatives. On the international scene, COVID-19 declared global pandemic. And in sport, NBA suspends season after player tests positive for coronavirus.
This is ANN News.
I am Olajumoke Olatunji. The House of Representatives has ordered an immediate investigation of the exercise to clean up oil spills in the country's oil-producing areas for the past 5 years. The committee will also probe the level of compliance with environmental guidelines and standards petroleum industry in Nigeria. House member Abubakar Hassan Fulata, who moved the motion for the investigation, said he was concerned about the sufferings in the Niger Delta region because of the deadly consequences of more than 50 years of oil spills and subsequent pollution of the freshwater system. He also pointed to the degradation of water quality and lowering of food web productivity. He said the nation's life expectancy of 55 years is lowered to 45 in the Niger Delta region. Fulata warned that failure to clean up spills in the region would create tension in the vulnerable communities that continue to live in a polluted environment that endanger their lives. Meanwhile, in another action, members of the House of Representatives have undone what the Senate had done just a week ago. They have indefinitely suspended the president's $22 billion external loan request. House Speaker Femi Gbajabiamila has asked that the matter be stood down, but did not give a new date. Opposition senators had stood against the Senate's approval last week, and a member of the House, Henry Nwabuba, had presented a petition by a Southeast group expressing opposition to the consideration and approval of the external loan. The president says the $27 billion loan would be used for the Nigeria Electricity Transmission and Access Project, Social Inclusion and Welfare Advancement Project, and the Economic Reforms and Governance Project. $27 billion. Serial defecation and disrespect for the Constitution of Nigeria. That is what a civil rights advocacy group is laying at President Buhari's door. The Human Rights Writers Association of Nigeria, HURIWA, is accusing the president of not just that, but of willfully demolishing the national economy of the country. The organization is calling on citizens to put in place emergency actions to compel the government to stop what it calls the systematic destruction of the country. HURIWA didn't just stop there. It got on the case of the National Assembly as well, where it says the leadership is inept, cash-driven, unpatriotic and hedonistic. The group says Nigerians should carry out their civic oversight role and demand accountability and transparency in governance. It also suggested using, quote, civil resistance strategy to protest the rot, end quote. The group's national coordinator, Emmanuel Onwubiko, said in a statement, it may take the nation a lifetime to recover from the economic damage suffered under this administration since 2015. Lagos State Health Commissioner Professor Akin Abayomi says 4 children from the same family and their teacher who arrived in the country from the United States have been quarantined for having had contact with a coronavirus patient. He also said another man from the United Kingdom was isolated as well. The Nigerian government says this coronavirus pandemic is affecting the Lagos-Ibadan rail project, which is being carried out by Chinese engineering firms. Deji Badmus reports completion date may be delayed.
It's by far the most crucial rail project in Nigeria, linking the country's commercial capital of Lagos and its seaports to the southwestern city of Ibadan. When completed, the Lagos-Ibadan rail project is expected to help decongest the country's busiest seaport in Lagos and reduce the number of heavy-duty vehicles on its roads.
If we are able to complete it to the port and shippers can now load directly to the rail, I think it will affect the economy of Nigeria and the commerce of Nigeria. And most times the companies say they are waiting for raw material and spare parts. We get them delivered to time. And at the same time, what we are exporting can go to the port through the rail.
Nothing paints a more vivid picture of the current situation than this. An endless column of trucks trying to access the seaport in Lagos, mainly to deliver their cargoes for export. Most end up spending days routed towards port before making any movement. The rail project is expected to eliminate all of this. The government had fixed a deadline for the completion of the project for April, but the railway chief now says that may not be feasible because of the outbreak of COVID-19, which has kept a large number of its Chinese contractors away.
Unfortunately, it happened while they are away in China, and then people felt that it's better to keep them there to wait the outcome at the end of the virus before they can come back. So as a result, most of the technical people are presently not in Nigeria.
But work has not completely stopped on the project. The few Chinese contractors who did not travel are actually still working, but the labor on site has significantly reduced.
Even the locomotive and coaches that were brought in, we could not organize the commissioning and training because the manufacturers are yet to come. Those that were around that did not travel, we are still working with them. Although most time now, even from their own side, they have sent email that for now it's better we interact on phone and email than making direct contact, which makes sense.
For now, it's not known how significantly the delay will impact on the full takeoff of the rail service. The Nigerian Railway Corporation has begun a test run on the tracks that have been completed. But regardless of the delay, the Nigerian government will still eventually get its signature project, the 156-kilometer Lagos-Ibadan standard gauge rail line.
Coming up, African stories. Algeria records first COVID-19 death. And later, international news. COVID-19 now declared global pandemic.
You are watching ANN.
Today, night don't reach for me to settle blessing for you. When this girl first got this my shop called network, now so on top of NTF 4G phone, now this girl could press. I provoke, no, it's short, it reach what time, eh? The ambulance to make her tell her to make she mash her act. Come out from my shop. And later I come realize, say, this girl go snap her. Put her for inside internet. They take her, they do adverts. Now I make customers that they come with my shop. Blessing, I want make you help me manage my shop now.
Madam, but I think Nami and Blessing start work the same time.
Now you and Blessing start work the same time. Blessing, you better start with a T-shirt for top of your 4G MTN phone.
Business makes sense on top super fast and reliable MTN 4G. Join MTN, make you enjoy double data.
Welcome back. This is ANN News. Now to African stories. Algeria has registered its first coronavirus death. State Radio reported on Thursday the COVID-19 confirmed cases remained at 20, mostly in Blida town. Algeria says it would ban economic, social and political gatherings, though it is not clear if this plan will include the year-long ongoing weekly mass protests. The World Health Organization has declared coronavirus a global pandemic on Wednesday. It has spread from China to 114 countries in just 3 months. More than 4,200 persons have been killed and 118,000 infected. Meanwhile, Ivory Coast has confirmed its first case of coronavirus on Wednesday in a 45-year-old Ivorian man who had recently traveled to Italy. South Africa is racking up what has been described as a serious loss in its tourism sector as a result of the coronavirus outbreak, and Tourism Minister Mameloko Kubayi told a tourism leadership forum in Sandton, just north of Johannesburg, earlier this week. The tourism industry has suffered significant losses, even though the numbers of COVID-19 cases in the country are very few. He said this negative impact on the sector could lead to business closures and job losses. The minister said the government will work with all stakeholders to implement measures that would bring relief to affected businesses and individuals. Coronavirus cases in South Africa has jumped to 7 after 4 more cases were confirmed on Monday. The Ugandan government has introduced the mandatory 14-day period of self-quarantine for travelers arriving from 16 countries, including the UK, the US and several European nations, to prevent the spread of coronavirus. Ugandan authorities have also said passengers arriving at international airports will soon be sprayed with disinfectant. Uganda has not recorded, no recorded positive case of coronavirus. Meanwhile, the Rwandan government is guarding against the spread of coronavirus by flooding its capital with portable sinks for hand washing at bus stop, restaurant, banks and shops across the capital, Kigali. Like Uganda, Rwanda has not reported any cases of coronavirus. A laboratory in Senegal's capital, Dakar, is developing rapid test kits that scientists say will diagnose coronavirus within 10 minutes. At least 2 million kits are expected to be produced per year, with availability in June, and will be distributed across the continent. The project is in collaboration with British biotech firm Mologig. On Wednesday, the World Health Organization declared coronavirus a global pandemic. It has spread from China to 114 countries in just 3 months, and more than 4,200 persons have been killed and 118,000 infected. So far, 12 African countries have reported COVID-19 outbreaks, with 112 cases and 2 deaths. The U.S. says it has imposed sanctions on 2 senior Zimbabwean politicians over human rights abuses. U.S. Treasury Department accuses the Security Minister, Owen Kube, of ordering the adoption and mistreatment of opposition supporters. Also, the former commander of an elite army unit, Anselm Sawantwe, is accused of ordering troops to shoot protesters, including an incident in 2018 when 6 supporters of the opposition MDC were shot dead. They have not commented on the allegations. U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo said in a tweet, the 2 men are already barred from entering the U.S. and will now have any U.S.-based asset frozen. Pompeo said the sanctions make clear that the U.S. will not tolerate the use of its financial system by human rights abusers in Zimbabwe. He also condemned silencing political opposition and civil society. When we return, international news. COVID-19 now declared global pandemic. And later, sports. NBA suspends season after player tests positive for coronavirus.
You are watching ANN.
Welcome back. This is ANN News. On the international front, the COVID-19 viral disease that has swept into at least more than 100 countries and killed more than 4,000 persons is now officially a pandemic. The declaration was made in Geneva on Wednesday at a news briefing by the Director General of the World Health Organization, Tedros Ghebreyesus. It's the first time the WHO has called an outbreak a pandemic since the H1N1 swine flu in 2009.
The World Health Organization has been very careful in the words it has been using to describe the spread of the COVID-19 coronavirus to date. Officials worry that if they used the word pandemic, well, that might discourage people from trying to contain it under the presumption that perhaps it was too late to do anything about it. Despite those concerns, though, World Health Organization headquarters in Geneva on Wednesday, that moment finally came.
In the days and weeks ahead, we expect to see the number of cases, the number of deaths, and the number of affected countries climb even higher. WHO has been assessing this outbreak around the clock, and we're deeply concerned both by the alarming levels of spread and severity and by the alarming levels of inaction. We have therefore made the assessment that COVID-19 can be characterized as a pandemic.
What WHO officials have also stressed, though, is that that word is a description of the situation as it stands, not a prescription for any change to the current efforts to try and contain the spread of this virus, and officials are very clear that all of us have a role to play in that.
I have said from the beginning that countries must take a whole of government, whole of society approach built around a comprehensive strategy to prevent infections, save lives, and minimize impact.
U.S. President Donald Trump has announced a 30-day ban on travels from Europe to the U.S. in an effort to contain the spread of coronavirus. The ban applies to travelers from European countries which are members of the Schengen border-free travel area. Trump said the temporary U.S. ban on arrivals from the 26 countries will take effect at midnight on Friday. Trump has accused those countries of not acting quickly enough to address what he calls the foreign virus. U.S. Department of Homeland Security says the restrictions will cover most foreign nationals who have been in any parts of these countries at any point during the 14-day prior to their scheduled arrival in the U.S. DHS further explained the ban does not apply to U.S. citizens returning home, not to foreign nationals who are legal permanent residents of the U.S. The European Union has condemned the measures, saying the decision were taken unilaterally and without consultation. There are close to 2,000 confirmed cases of the virus across the U.S., with 38 deaths so far. And just moments after the World Health Organization declared the COVID-19 outbreak a pandemic, India has suspended all tourist visas until mid-April. It also says travelers arriving from 7 virus-hit countries will be quarantined. India said this is part of its measures to contain the spread of the new coronavirus. The country's visa suspension begins Friday, but diplomatic visas and visas for international organizations, employment and projects are exempted. The number of COVID-19 cases in India, which has a population of more than 1 billion, has doubled to 73 in the past 4 days, increasing public fear and the government's state of alert. Many of the cases have been blamed on Indians who have traveled or worked in badly hit countries in Europe and the Middle East. 3 soldiers, 2 Americans and a Briton were killed after multiple rockets hit an Iraqi base housing U.S. and coalition troops on Wednesday. 12 soldiers have also been confirmed injured during the attack, which is under investigation by the coalition and Iraqi security forces. In a statement on Thursday, Iraqi President Barham Salih condemned the attack and pledged to investigate and hold accountable those responsible. The statement further says a number of coalition consultants and trainers within the international coalition operating in Iraq were killed in the attack. An Iraqi military commander said this was the 22nd attack against U.S. military interests in the country since late October. U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo and Britain's Foreign Secretary Dominic Raab have vowed to hold accountable those behind the attack. Up next, sports. NBA suspends season after player tests positive for coronavirus. Please stay with us.
You are watching ANN.
Welcome back. This is ANN News and Sport. Gabon coach Tom Saintfiet is asking for a postponement of this month's 2021 Africa Cup of Nations qualifiers between the Gambia and Gabon. Saintfiet says this is because the country cannot access 7 key Italy-based players after Italy announced the nation's total lockdown on Monday, with 7 of the Gambia's players, including defender and captain Omar Kali, who plays for Sampdoria, based with Italy clubs and now inaccessible. Saintfiet says it would be too unfair to play the qualifiers. The NBA is suspending its season after a player tested positive for coronavirus. The news came after the NBA game between the Utah Jazz and Oklahoma City Thunder was abruptly postponed on Wednesday night. In a statement, the Utah Jazz says a player on the team tested negative for influenza, strep throat, and an upper respiratory infection Wednesday morning. That is ANN News this evening. Thank you for joining us. For details on these and other breaking stories, visit our website, annafrica.news. Conversation continues on our social media platforms, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at ANN Africa TV. I am Olajumoke Olatunji. Have a pleasant evening.